Abrimos el audio. Paso el turno a Rufus.
How many of you are using tablet devices? Using Adobe software on tablet devices? Very few. Okay, so let's hope to show you some new stuff today. But this whole thing, this whole masterclass, I'm going to start with using Photoshop CS5. I'm going to talk about a technology that's actually been introduced in Photoshop CS4, which is the content-aware technology. I don't know if you remember that, or if any of you use that in your day-to-day work. But for example, let me open this. Oh, it's probably going to open with the, you see, double-click, come on. Sorry about that. Yes, I'm sure. So, there we go. Yeah. Okay, let me open it like this. Basically, what this technology allowed us to do is to do things like this. So I'm going to make this this image. I'm going to make it slightly bigger. I'm going to make the canvas bigger, and maybe make it 40. Okay, and then basically what we can do now is make a selection. And this, of course, came in Photoshop CS4 and use the content-aware scale, right? But when using the content-aware scale, Photoshop only scales elements that are, that are not, where the pixels aren't together. So it's very, very useful for example, adding some sky to your pictures. You can really stretch things quite easily. And this came in Photoshop CS4. But let me show you another example. I have this van here, and what I want to do with this van, I'm going to not apply this. What I want to do with this van is actually make a limousine out of it. So basically what I would do, I would take it and do something like this, right? Do you like my limousine? No, right? Let's move back and escape out of this and use the content-aware scale. Okay? Same thing, content-aware scale, and check out how the minivan now behaves. Okay? So now I can really stretch things out, and things like the wheels have actually remained round. Because Photoshop uses this content-aware technology to actually see what are the shapes in the image. Of course, now we have some problems. We have, the storefront and some panels here that are badly stretched. But there's also a way to work on that. For example, what I did here, what I created is a channel. Let me just show you the channel in a second. I created a channel just with a couple of selections on that van. Let me go back to my RGB image, get rid of this channel here. Let's go back to my layers. And I'm going to do the same now. I'm going to edit content-aware scale, but what I'm going to do is to actually protect some parts of the image. And I'm going to use my alpha channel or my selections. And at that point, check out the storefront. Now the storefront remains how it should be, just because I masked it. So it's a very, very useful technology to actually, to stretch things like sky or like this car that I've just done. But of course, since we live in Europe, I come from Italy, so we all know that we drive cars like this. You agree? The mini cars. Alright, so this is the content-aware that was introduced in Photoshop CS4. Now let me show you what how it evolved. It evolved in Photoshop CS5. And basically, what I'm going to do here, this is actually a pretty sad story. That you see, this is little Billy on the left side of the picture, and that's his summer love. You know, you all have these, right? This girl during the vacation that you fell in love with. But unfortunately, they're not together anymore. And I don't want to pay for Billy's psychological help when he's a teenager, and I don't want him to remember this girl in the middle of the picture. So basically, all I need to do now, using again the content-aware technology, is simply make a selection here. I'm going to make a very quick selection with my lasso tool, something like that. And when I press the delete key now, I can not only use the black and white fills that we always had, but I can also use the content-aware fill. So when I say OK to this, boom, the problem is gone. All right, and I won't have these crazy psychiatric expenses for little Billy here on the left side of the picture. Okay, so this is the next step in content aware, and we will see later when Anna will show us some of the Photoshop CS6 data how content aware evolves even further. But content aware can also be useful for things like this. Let me take this image for a second and just correct it. What I did here. Let me just zoom in a little bit more like this. What I have here is a selection. I'm going to take a selection, okay? You see, I selected the yellow lines here. Let me actually zoom in here for a second. Let me see if I can make it so you can all see it a little bit better. The screen is a little bit small. Okay. So basically what I want to do here is just remove the yellow lines, and if I press delete, I can content-aware fill that, and again, in a second, I can remove really all of these things that were in the image that I don't need. Okay? So this is content aware. But you can also be very creative with content aware. Let me show you this zebra image that I have. And what I want to do here, and again, I have a selection already saved here, a selection of the zebra. And what I'm going to do is, again, delete. Oops, no. Okay, that's the delete we all know. But if I do shift delete on this, because it's on the background layer, what I will do is actually choose also a blending mode for that deletion of the zebra. And what I want to do here is to actually choose the darken blending mode and see what happens. Photoshop now goes into the image, wants to delete the zebra, but is going to use a blending mode to delete it. So what do you think will happen? No idea? We're going to have the semi-transparent zebra. Okay? Because I told Photoshop to keep all of the dark areas, alright, while deleting the background. Is that pretty cool? Can you do cool stuff with that? Who's talking there? Great, thank you so much for your support. Let's now save this and move on to something else that Photoshop is getting very good at, and that is actually 3D. And what I want to do, I want to actually use this image again, the Tibet image, and what I want to do now is going to open this. Sorry about that. I really need to do something about that. Quit. Okay. Yes, I'm sure. We just. Yes, very good. Thank you, Anna. Thank you for your support. Alright, so what I'm going to do here now is to actually add some text on this image. Okay? So I'm going to use my type tool and start writing in maybe, let's write just Tibet. Okay? And make that type white. Something like that. And make everything slightly bigger. So it really looks like we have this text on the plane here, okay? And what I really want to do here is to create some sort of a 3D sculpture from that text. And the other cool thing in Photoshop is that I can use a 3D object and actually cast shadows on a 2D image. So check this out. I'm going to commit to that text. I'm going to use 3D, repousser, and we can see here that Photoshop can create repoussé objects from quite a few different sources, like a layer mask or a selected path or even a selection. But in this case, it's from a text layer. So let's say, okay, Photoshop will rasterize the text to be able to actually transform it into a 3D object. Okay, here we go. This is the window that we have. Here is our object. I can, of course, turn the object around like I want. I have a ground plane that I can change. I can change the presets for that 3D shape that I want to create. I can also change the materials. And if we look into here, we have a whole bunch of materials already in Photoshop. But if you want more, you can always go on to Photoshop.com, and there's many more that you can download there. If you're interested in learning how to, to create 3D directly in Photoshop. I'm simply going to say OK to this. Of course, now the 3D object has been created, and in Photoshop I still have the possibility to use my 3D tools here to place it exactly like I want. But what I want here is also here in the 3D menu is to actually activate the ground plane shadow catcher, this thing here, okay? And now, when I go into rendering, let me go here into my layers, and let's open the 3D layer here. I'm going to change the quality of the rendering from interactive to actually ray traced, because in Photoshop there is a ray tracing engine. So I'm going to do a draft because it's a bit faster, and you can see now that Photoshop is ray tracing the object and casting the shadows on that 3D object, and also the shadows of the object on the ground plane. So this is a whole new way of creating 3D in Photoshop, but also maybe importing 3D objects from other sources, placing them in a 2D environment, and using Photoshop functionalities to actually cast the shadows on the 2D image. Let me just show you a couple of examples of things that I did. I'm going to escape out of this, and let me just open these two, and I'm going to open it the old way, dragging and dropping on the icon. This, for example, is simply done with 3 circles. I can show you in a second how I did that. Or this labyrinth, I was curious to see how I could cast shadows on a round labyrinth like that. So basically what I did, I created the labyrinth in Illustrator, brought it into Photoshop, extruded it, set my lights to see how the shadows actually behave in a round structure like that. Let's just create a new document for a second, and I'm going to